So the Ravens seemingly decided to get out ahead of whatever happens next with Justin Tucker's off the field situation by releasing him, but their announcement of his release got a little weird to say the least. So I've got to talk about why things were a bit weird on how they went about it, quarterback contracts about to skyrocket, the Tush Push Ban being revisited very soon, and more right after. All right, first up, the Washington Commanders will officially be hosting the 2027 NFL Draft. Up until 2014, the draft was held in New York, but for the last 10 years, the location has changed year to year. The Packers hosted it at Lambeau most recently, a couple weeks ago. Then the Steelers are set to host in 2026, and now we know that in 2027, it's going to be held in Washington, D.C. Doesn't mean a whole lot, still pretty far away, but it's always a big deal for whatever city ends up hosting it. It was in Kansas City a couple years ago, and it was freaking awesome. It's like the Super Bowl of the offseason with most of the NFL world in attendance. Over 600,000 people attended the draft in Green Bay this year, for example, so it's a huge event that is great for the city and local businesses. Now, somebody who allegedly attended lots of local businesses is Baltimore Ravens kicker Justin Tucker. He's not only coming off of a pretty down year, arguably the worst of his career, but is also facing allegations of inappropriate behavior by 16 massage therapists in the Baltimore area, with these alleged incidents occurring from 2012 to 2016. The NFL is still conducting their own investigation from what I understand, and Ravens team officials have previously said they would wait to make a decision on Tucker's future with the team until after the investigation is finalized, but it looks like they're getting ahead of whatever happens next and are releasing him as of today. They drafted kicker Tyler Loop in the 6th round of the 2025 NFL Draft, and that was a pretty big eyebrow raiser because it meant the Justin Tucker era could very well be over. Well, it is officially over, at least in Baltimore, with the club insisting this was a quote-unquote football decision. But considering all the off-the-field allegations he's been dealing with, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, how can you say this is purely a football decision when you also have all the off-the-field allegations going on as well? The Ravens executive VP and GM Eric DaCosta continued saying after that, based on the current roster, quote, "We have made the tough decision to release Justin Tucker, and ultimately they wish he and his family the very best in the next chapter of their lives." Now, is Justin Tucker actually done in the NFL? I don't know. I don't think so, but I would say kind of like the Isaiah Bond situation, he's in the midst of a legal issue that needs to continue playing out, and he went undrafted because of that. I think teams are just going to stand back and let this whole thing play out. It's a messy situation I don't think any team wants to be dealing with, including the Ravens, because some people are saying, well, hey, he had a very bad year last year, and so they moved on from him. You can have a down year and still bounce back from that. He's one of the best kickers in NFL history, and at the very least, you would probably give Justin Tucker training camp, at least to battle it out with the new kicker that they drafted. I understand they save also like $4.5 million to move on from him, so some of that is a football move. I just don't think it's entirely a football move, and to pretend that it's not is a bit naive and probably foolish, but I would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think it's purely a football move here, the release of Justin Tucker, or do you think, nah, the off-the-field situation does have some merit here, and probably they're trying to get ahead of whatever could come next? Let me know either way in the comments down below. And on the subject of the Ravens, let's stick here for a minute because they just signed a new offensive tackle in Joseph Noteboom. John Harbaugh said he'll primarily be a swing tackle, but he can play guard if need be. He's played both tackle spots and both guard spots over his 7-year career, though he has more experience at tackle. Regardless, he's very versatile, and while it's not the flashiest signing, that's how most of these signings are going to look at this point in free agency. But anytime you can add quality depth to your offensive line, you do it. I still have PTSD from Super Bowl 59, so yes, add O-line depth whenever possible, especially when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league you're trying to protect in Lamar Jackson. And speaking of that quarterback, Ari Mirov recently laid out 25 players who could be seeking contract extensions in the coming weeks, with Lamar Jackson being one of them. He signed a massive 5-year, $260 million extension only a few years ago, back in 2023, with that deal set to expire after the 2027 season. Well, if you look at his cap hits over 2026 and 2027, you'll see they're both at $74.5 million. Good God. The thought is Baltimore could extend him once again and spread some of that money out over future years, thus lowering his cap hits in the short term and allowing Baltimore to continue building a more complete roster around him. I mean, they are a very complete roster right now, but continuing to sustain that. Obviously, they want to keep Lamar in Baltimore long-term as it is, and by all indications, Lamar wants to be there himself. So this feels like a win-win and something I expect to happen at some point, whether it's this offseason or maybe even the next. And when a new extension does get done, don't be surprised if we see Lamar Jackson become the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, topping Dak's contract that has him at $60 million per year on average. Another quarterback that should be getting paid pretty soon here is Brock Purdy. How soon? Great question. Ian Rappaport appeared on the Pat McAfee show today, and he said he hasn't gotten the sense that a Brock Purdy deal will get done soon, but it seems like things are positive and at least heading in the right direction. The 49ers have made it clear that their priority is to sign Brock to a long-term extension. Owner Jed York acknowledged that fact and also acknowledged that is playing a role in so much roster turnover this offseason. They lost key starters on both sides of the ball, and a lot of that was done with the looming Brock Purdy contract in mind. So we know both sides are working on a deal, but here's a question. How much is he actually going to get? Well, according to Mike Jones of The Athletic, that's an insane name to have, I'm sorry, but Purdy is expected to land a deal that will pay him around $50 million per season. If he gets exactly $50 million per year, that would make him the 11th highest paid in the league. And since the wording here was among the highest paid, I wonder if we see him get closer to $55 million per year. That's what Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow are currently making, as they're all tied for the second highest paid behind, again, only Dak Prescott, who's making $60 million APY. Right underneath that is Tua Tagovailoa, whose APY is $53.1 million, and many could pretty easily argue that Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than Tua at this point in time. Again, that's a nuanced argument that you could present from multiple different angles, but I think Purdy should probably at least get paid Tua Tagovailoa money, if not more. It's going to be fascinating to see what Purdy ends up making because people seem pretty split on it, like everybody is on social media with any subject. Some think he definitely deserves to be a top 5 highest paid QB because he's led them to a Super Bowl and has put up solid numbers all along the way. But then you have others who say he's just a product of their roster and coaching staff and he's only a game manager. Well, that theory will definitely be put to the test as he enters next year without Deebo Samuel. Then Brandon Ayuk is coming back from a significant knee injury, and they lost 2 of their top 6 offensive linemen in free agency. One was a backup, but still, you lost a couple of your linemen, and Trent Williams isn't getting any younger. Purdy is going to be asked to carry even more on his shoulders with that roster, presumably taking a step back talent-wise, and that's not to mention all the turnover on the defensive side of the ball. Now, there might also be some of you in the camp that think, even if Brock Purdy got $50 million per year, that is way too much. But it's important to keep in mind that the timing of when these deals get done matters. 2 off seasons ago, Joe Burrow signed an extension that made him the highest paid quarterback in the league at the time, paying him $55 million per year. Well, that $55 million would have been 24% of the team's salary cap that year. But since then, the cap has gone up over $50 million, and that same salary today would take up around 19% of the salary cap on average. It's only going to continue to rise too as the league generates more and more revenue. You could see how much the cap has skyrocketed over the last few years alone, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. As a result, we're going to see some ridiculous quarterback contracts year after year, and it's never going to be the same. Look at this. 10 years ago, in 2015, the highest paid quarterback was Aaron Rodgers, who was making $22 million per season. That's as much as running backs make now. It's nearly tripled for quarterbacks since obviously Dak is making $60 million APY. So from here on out, we're going to do what we do every year and say, that feels a bit high or wholly overpay. Well, that's because revenue for the NFL is only going up and players are going to get paid more than we expect. But what do you guys think? Does Brock Purdy deserve to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league or nah? If you disagree with that, where exactly do you think he deserves to be paid from an average per year standpoint? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let's stick here with the quarterback news for a minute because a deal that got announced during the combine became finalized today, and that is the contract between the Rams and one of the best quarterbacks still in the NFL, Matt Stafford. This was on February 28th. They announced he was here to stay, with the details on the restructured contract for the veteran not going to be announced. It said over the next few weeks is when it's going to be announced, but it was way after that. If it's just getting reported on today, which Ian Rappaport said today at 1 p.m., the Rams and QB Matt Stafford have finalized. So it took a little longer than I think either side would have liked, especially the Rams, but They finalized the terms on his new contract as the deal negotiated during the NFL Combine is now official. Stafford will earn $44 million this year, with $4 million already paid and the other $40 million fully guaranteed. Well, good for him at the age of 36, 37 years old. If Matthew Stafford is on the Rams roster next year at the start of free agency, he'll lock in another $40 million. Stafford was on the books for $58 million over 2 years. Now it's $84 million over 2 years. Obviously, the Rams want him around. He's still borderline top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's obviously, even at the age of 37-ish years old, not making top of the market QB money, but this is still pretty good money in my opinion. And then this isn't really a fun story at all, but Browns linebacker Devin was recently arrested and charged with assault. According to the criminal complaint, police showed up after Devin's girlfriend called in to report an assault on Sunday. She claims that she and Devin got into an argument and it got aggressive. He allegedly chased her around the house, pinned his body up against her and ripped the phone out of her hands and smashed it after she tried recording. Police reportedly found cuts on her wrist and foot, and while Devin did admit to smashing the phone, he denied ever getting physical. He has a preliminary hearing scheduled for May 20th, so we'll see what comes of this in a couple of weeks. I will say, DV-related charges are something the NFL takes very serious, and sadly, Devin Bush is far from the first NFL player to be involved in something like this. There's also been a bunch of previous scenarios that have played out where no guilt has been found and the NFL still goes ahead and suspends that player. So I have no idea what the future with the Browns is going to be for Devin. He just re-signed a 1-year deal back in March, so it's not like there's a long-term commitment there on Cleveland's end, but they have reportedly shared they are aware of the situation and are gathering more info, and time will truly tell there. Next up, NFL owners will be gathering at the spring league meetings in Minneapolis here in a couple weeks, with everyone's eyes on the fate of the Tush Push, the brotherly shove. They actually voted on banning it back in March, but owners were split and ultimately decided to table the final decision until May. You need 24 votes to approve of a rule change, so 8 owners will need to be swayed, and they weren't quite there yet. But there's been growing belief around the league that the Tush Push could soon maybe be on its way out, and here's why. The original proposal from the Packers that all the owners voted on back in March was this: to ban the pushing of a player who was lined up directly behind the snapper and receives the snap, i.e. the tush push. However, there may be another path to banning the tush push that doesn't involve that proposal. Up until 2004, the league had a rule that prohibited the pushing or pulling of ball carriers no matter where they were at on the field or how they received the ball. It was removed in 2004, but the return of this rule could be the final key in getting the Tush Push banned. There's reportedly a strong possibility that the competition committee will present the revival of that rule or something similar to it. If that happens, the belief around the league is this proposal would actually have some strong support. Will it be enough to get the rule passed? That remains to be seen. It does seem like Roger Goodell is somewhat in favor of doing away with it, saying that banning the ability to push and pull players makes sense, even beyond just the tush push. It definitely seems like the league is bound and determined to try and get this play removed, but we won't know for sure until after the league meetings here in a couple of weeks. I'm kind of torn on it myself. The main reason from other teams as to why they want the play removed is safety concerns, but there has been zero data that proves an increase of injury risk on that play, unless you count Chris Jones in the Super Bowl, who literally lined up sideways. I would advise against that in the future. Sean McDermott was one of the people who claimed the play isn't safe and therefore should be banned, yet the Bills ran that play the second most of any team in the league last year, only behind the Eagles. And that's why some people think the league and or owners around the league are basically colluding to shut down this one play that the Eagles do better than anybody else. Player safety, integrity of the game, pace of play, all these things have been mentioned as reasons as to why the play should be removed, but I can just about guarantee you that if any of these other teams had the same success the Eagles had running this play, they probably wouldn't be trying so hard to get it banned. I also understand this aspect of things as well, because some people against the tush push have somewhat of a legitimate argument here, and that's not talking injury concern at all. They just say, hey, it's not really fair that the offense can physically push their ball carrier forward, but the defense isn't allowed to push their own players from behind to try and stop it. Well, that definitely makes some sense and is one of several angles hopefully being considered when the vote takes place here later this month. But hey, you guys got to let me know your thoughts on the tush push. Do you think it should be banned or nah? The Eagles just do it better than everybody else and people just need to accept that fact, or try to get better? Let me know either way in the comments down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.